welcome to the Office of Homeland Security Emergency Preparedness 2024 to 2028 Capital Improvement Plan public meeting. As you know, we're at the beginning stages of the capital budget planning process. We always start with public meetings with all the department heads to discuss their 5-year capital plan submittal, to give the public an opportunity to view the department's goals over the next 5 years in terms of facility improvements and operational improvements related to those facilities. What we'll ask you to do is to please just go through your request, provide a brief description of what you have requested, and for any questions, comments that might arise during that discussion. Also, if we could just do a round of introductions. I'm Ray Massey, the Deputy Director of the City Planning Commission.
I'm Ben Smith, Director of Capital Projects.
Colin Arnold, I'm the Director of the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. All right. So for 2024 through 2028, our capital budget request for NOSEP, request number 1 is for a public safety warehouse. This is an ongoing project. There's been a lot of work done on it as far as looking at locations to either existing city locations that are built, existing city locations that can support the construction of a public safety warehouse. And currently what we're on is the warehouse that is located at 3035 Earhart Boulevard, which is currently owned by Mardi Gras interests. It's used as a float den. It's next door to the coroner's office and EMS. It's in a really good location. The owner of the warehouse is interested in selling. This has been brought to our attention through both NOSEP's need for additional storage, particularly post-COVID. We have a lot of PPE that we keep for for other public safety agencies like fire and EMS and the police department, as well as for other city departments should it be needed again. That's just one factor. We have an existing warehouse on Lafayette Street near the Superdome that is to capacity. I think more importantly, EMS and particularly the fire department have indicated that they are out of storage. The fire department has had a few different locations closed where they were storing things, including the Poland and St. Claude. The fire station there is under renovation and had a small storage area that they can no longer use. They had a storage shop on Magazine Street in the old fire station, like old fire station near the World War II Museum that has pretty much been condemned, so they're out of that. And then they had a hangar or metal building out at the airport that they were using for storage that was damaged to the point it had to be demolished after Ida. So their storage and warehousing capability right now is greatly diminished. This would be a project to kind of bring about a 60,000 square foot warehouse, extremely well built, ready to go, has HVAC, security systems, roll-up doors, loading docks. It's a really great facility if we can get it. So where that stands right now is we're waiting on the final approval to get an appraisal. We're working with the Department of Property Management and the real estate team there to get that accomplished. The appraiser has been selected and the contract has been drawn up. However, it's been held up in purchasing law. And so we're waiting on that to be finalized. Once we have an appraisal, the owner will get an appraisal, and I'm assuming this. The owner wants a certain amount for this building, approximately $7 million. We do not think it's going to appraise for that. I'm sure they will get an appraisal, and then there will be some negotiation about the price. But what is reflected in this capital budget request is the overall absolute max that could potentially be in play, although, as I said, I sincerely doubt that 7 million is the number. I think it to be more around 3 to 5 million. And so you see there, we went over the 2024, the $5 million would be pretty much what we're assuming we would pay for the building. And then just as a place marker, they placed the 2 million in 2025. Just in case there needs to be any types of additions, modifications, or any type of renovation to the facility. Although, like I said, we toured it. I don't see any, other than minor issues, I don't see anything that would need to be renovated.
So it is moving right.
It's moving right, 100%. Office space, HVAC, it's got living quarters. It'd be perfect for the fire department, and EMS. Being that EMS is right next door to them, and so, but obviously, the police have indicated interest in storing things there. My department has an interest in putting some things there as well.
So it's got enough capacity that we could use it for PD as well.
Yes, and in fact, down the road, if we did want to do any modifications, it's got these. It's massive. It's 32-foot ceilings. So you could actually do a mezzanine level around, steel mezzanine level inside, and basically double the amount of storage space you have. Obviously, pallet shelves and all those types of things can be put in there as well. I mean, they can. There's a lot of maximization of space in that facility available. So, but for now, even just getting it, it's ready to move in, and it's plenty. It's very big.
And is it correct that the city owns the actual property?
No, there
not
was
the
some.
warehouse?
They did it one time. There's been some searching on that. I think what has finally come down from the real estate records is that at one time the city owned it. I believe it was part of UPT and kind of the railroad property there, but that it was sold off at some point in the past. And I'm talking more of the distant past. I think the confusion came up is when you search it in the assessor's website, it comes up with two entries, one for the city of New Orleans and one for the current owner.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was going around that, like, how is it possible the city owns the property but somebody else owns the building? That seems to not be the case. So it's completely owned by this other individual. So that's kind of the long story on the public safety warehouse and our number one request. And again, this has been a continuation request over the past few years. We are actively working this to be purchased with either, I think ARPA funds or capital projects, capital funds, somewhere in there. And so it has gone in front of the council. They deferred on it. They're not happy about the price. I get it. I tried to explain that it was merely, this is the negotiating part of trying to buy a piece of property. But at least they didn't vote it down. So it's just been deferred until we have an appraisal. And that's what we're looking at. So for number two, weather stations. 2 years ago, we installed a system of 20 highly accurate, robust weather stations geographically located around the city. There's several that are on sewers and water board sites, several on obviously around the city, utilizing police stations, fire stations, and NORD facilities. They do require power. That's why we tend to stick with city buildings, and then we have an agreement. We place 3 of them on Port of New Orleans property at different locations, so they would have access to the information as well. We freely share the information not only with other departments in the city, but also with partners like the Sewage and Water Board, the port. We share it with the National Weather Service. They've entered these weather sites into their weather system so that they can use them to record rainfall rates and different metrics that they're looking at. And then we also share it with the public. We created a website called weatherwise.nola.gov where you can look up these different weather stations. They'll have webcams on them. They have they're absolutely accessible to the public, and we use it as a weather tool. There's a element to it as well. That's where the stem comes from, with leather stem. It's just a lot of, it's a great resource to have for the public and for us when we're looking at severe weather. So those 20 stations were purchased and paid for out of general fund 2 years ago. When we purchased it, we also purchased the maintenance and service on them for until 2025. So what we're looking at for 2024 is I'd like to expand the system, add a few more sites. I think we've created what's called a mesonet, which there doesn't need to be that much addition to it. But what I'm learning from the vendor, who's been really great with us, is that they're coming out with some capability to install Doppler radar on some of these sites, which we'd be very interested in. So we're looking at about $150,000 in 2024 to invest in upgrading and adding sites to the weather stem system. And then what reflects from 2025 to 2028 is $25,000 a year, which is the maintenance and service that we pay to weather stem for the system. And again, that's paid through 2025. Starting 2025, we'll either budget it as a capital expenditure or have to budget it as general fund. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. It's been a very good project.
Sounds great. How many additional locations would you expect?
Probably about 5. All right, number 3 is a mobile command vehicle. We have command vehicles that are coming of age, or coming to the end of their useful life, I should say. We have purchased 2. We're moving to a more rapid response command vehicle system. We've observed in other major cities and also with FEMA that they still have a quantity or a fleet of larger command vehicles, kind of the ones that are basically built off of large RV chassis, or in some cases, like our NOSEP command vehicle currently is a 45-foot RV bus that was converted by the manufacturer into a command vehicle. These are great, but like I said, they're 45 feet long, 17 feet tall with all the antennas and array on top. It's difficult to move them around the city. It's a production. You have to go scout the route. You have to have chase vehicles and pace vehicles with you. They use a lot of fuel. They're maintenance hogs, just being honest. They've got these hydraulic slide out systems on them to expand the size of them once they're parked, but they frequently break. The large vehicle, I think, will always have a place, command vehicle, for certain incidents. But what we're looking at doing and what we've begun to do is replace those larger vehicles with smaller, the 25-foot range Sprinter vans. We purchased 2 of them with general funds last year. They are being built and should be delivered by the end of this year. We're looking potentially for some capital outlay, if possible, to augment that last. We wanted to get 3 of them. We have 2 being built. We'd like 1 more. And if that's something we can accomplish in the next year or 2, I think that would be very advantageous for us. So it would be for a 25-foot Sprinter van outfitted. We've got all the specifications on them. They end up being about $280,000 to $300,000, depending on the economy, depending on what they're outfitted with. These are pretty basic.
So would the 3 all work as like 1 unit, or each one are they equipped? Like fully equipped?
Great question. So they're all fully equipped. What we envision is that for smaller events, smaller incidents and smaller special events, we could place 1 of them out, and that will adequately seat 5 to 8 people for an event. Something like, I'll use an example, French Quarter Fest. That would be perfect for a French Quarter Fest. smaller type weekend festival where we are providing special event coverage. For something larger, like say, I'll use an example of like the New Orleans East tornado in 2017, we would take all three of them and place them together and create almost basically a base camp type scenario where we would have three command vehicles. You could have operations in one, communications in one, and a planning section or a command section in the other. And they can be parked next to each other. They just offer a lot of flexibility. They can be maintained by EMD, which is a big thing. Whenever you have these large buses, you have to take them to typically a vendor, an outside vendor who deals specifically with these large types of vehicles. They're better on gas, better on repairs. They can, be moved just like driving any other van around the city. So it is a much better, especially for an urban environment, it's a much better solution, we believe. So for number 4, the alert flood warning system. In 2018, 2017-2018 timeframe, this came out of grant funding, a grant project from the federal government after the August floods in 2017, the sewer and water board issues. And the heavy rains that were also, that existed during that spring and summer. We put in a flood warning system that exists in 12 different primarily underpass locations around the city. They all have worked quite well. We took quite a hit during Ida with wind damage on them. And then the other big culprit is vehicle damage from being struck by different sites being struck by vehicles. Typically what you'll have at a site is at least 3 installations at each site. One is the primary weather station unit and communications unit, and then on each end of the intersection or the roadway, there's 2 large poles that have some communications equipment on them, but also the signage and the lighting that indicates that it's a flooded roadway and the road is closed, and it has red flashing LED lights on each end. Some have more. What comes to mind would be Canal Boulevard, right at near Navarre. The Canal Boulevard underpass you have canal moving both lake and river bound, so there's warning signs on each end of that to warn people to stop prior to the underpass. Still gives them the ability to do a U-turn. A lot of people ask why they're installed so far away from the actual underpass. We don't want people to get all the way up to the underpass and not be able to turn around. So traffic engineering and DPW were able to help us with these installations and how they should be set up. But at that one in particular, there's a third sign at Homedale, because if you probably know the area, you can come off of Homedale onto Canal Boulevard right there, right before the underpass. So anyways, probably too much explanation for what we need here, but ultimately, each of these sites requires maintenance. DPW's been able to help us out. They're all the standard NHTSA, DOT rated traffic signs and traffic poles and lights. We've been able to, I have an employee upstairs, one of my staff members who paid real close attention as the project manager when they're being installed. And he's now replaced several of the installations himself. So we're able to maintain the system pretty frugally, I would say. But there's 3 sites that we're still waiting to have repaired that were struck by vehicles. And what we would like to do is actually, what this request is about is actually adding, we'd like to add up to 10 new sites. And these would be more focused in neighborhoods instead of underpasses. So it'd be a new project for us. It would be one area that I can say right off the bat would be around between Norman Francis and Carrollton on Banks is an area that frequently floods, regardless of what we've done to try and clean the storm drains, and that area of Bank Street floods pretty rapidly when we have even a modest amount of heavy rain. So that would be an area I could say off the bat, because I know we've already kind of scoped it out, that we would like to put a sign that would basically, one on each end of these areas, that would kind of warn people that there's flooding present, and that the road should, not to travel on the roadway. So there's about 10 locations around the city that we'd like to try this out with, and so that would be the request for the flood warning system funding. They're relatively inexpensive to install. What I've found is that the maintenance, and I think that maintenance moving forward is the difficult thing to keep up with. Because we'll literally come in on a Monday and somebody will have taken out 2 of them with vehicles. Franklin Avenue, that happened a couple of times. I've driven by and seen them flop down on the entire pole taken down on the side of the road. And then finally, no set vehicle replacement. We're in a good position right now, which is why for 2024 I don't have any vehicle needs. The command vehicle is a separate line item, but what I do see in 2025 is having to replace several high water vehicles, just end of life. I think we're good through next year. We just had a bulk check to the DMV, and although there are some issues, 2 of them are operational. We're good to go for hurricane season, but I just fear that within the next year or 2, it's probably going to be something we need to look at, replacing some of our larger vehicles. These are not fleet vehicles. We got a pretty good replacement or are anticipating a replacement of those coming from the large order that was placed here this year. So haven't seen any of them yet, but we're good in that respect. And as per the CAO's request, we put vehicles on the capital budget request. So
Colin, I don't see the EOC built out of the VA. And I think I'm not sure, just off the top of my head, in your conversation, as you've been engaged in the project, has there been any conversation about us being underfunded for that project?
No. The only funding issue that I've been made aware of and have been dealing with is the $5 million for from the FEMA federal EOC grant that we received. We were originally told it was an earmark from Senator Cassidy's office, but what I found out later, once I got the paperwork from the state, is that it's an EOC grant that FEMA authorized this year that was pretty much given out to any of the jurisdictions where congressional interest was picked. So I appreciate Senator Cassidy's work to get us that $5 million, and I've filled out all the application for that grant, sent it to the state, and I'm just waiting. Obviously, as you know, we pass through everything. Everything has to pass through the state. Waiting on GOSEP to obviously if they forwarded that to Region 6 with FEMA, and then see where that comes back down. But I can certainly add the EOC into the.
Yeah. Do me a favor, follow up. Who's over this one? Sean, it's not Sean. Who's managing this?
Sean.
Check with Sean.
Okay.
And find out, if we've got a gap and something's telling me to do. And go ahead and add it. And I may just circle back with you. I've never been to the warehouse.
Yeah, that's
Okay, but those are all the questions that we have.
great. Anything online? Everybody?
very interesting. Well, thank you for your
Right.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.